Hey, this is Nicole Kelly, host of Disarming Disability. Thanks for listening to the following show on Public House Media.
This is Rachel Mullins, host of #NoFilterFriday here on Public House Media. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out my new show, #NoFilterFriday, where we talk about all of the sexual misconduct allegations swirling around Hollywood. A new show drops every Friday at 8:30 Pacific Standard Time. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you'll never miss an episode of #NoFilterFriday. Thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Hi, and welcome to Beauties and Headcanons, where we're nerdy, and you probably are too. I'm Lindsay, and I'm here today with Elisabeth and Emily, and we're here to talk nerdy to you about a Cinderella story. Well, specifically the ones that have come out more recently. We all know about the animated Disney version from 1950 and grew up with it, probably know all the words, might even be able to play Drusilla or Anastasia if needed on the fly, but the live action one came out in 2015, and whether you watched it in the theaters or saw it recently on some kind of Netflix / Hulu / downloaded DVD version, we wanted to talk about the differences and what we loved and what we didn't love about that. So today, that's what we wanted to talk about. We've all got our own different ideas and some little tidbits and Easter eggs that happened in the live action version versus the animated. And let's just get going. So, I mean, we can go from start to finish on it. I kind of did a lot of going from the beginning to the very end. What's really cool about the live action version is I feel like there's a lot of familiar faces in the cast that we might not have known were there.
Oh yeah, that one hit me particularly hard because the very first time I saw the prince, like I had no idea like who was anybody in the cast. I hadn't looked up the cast list or anything, so I didn't know who was who going into it. And the first time I saw him in the forest, I'm like, I did a double take, and I'm like, wait, is that Hayden Christensen? Like the way he's smiling, it looks like Hayden Christensen. I'm like, no, that can't be him. I'm like, and like a second later, I'm like, oh my god, he looks like Sebastian Stan. Okay, who is this guy? And I had to pull it up, and I'm like, Richard Madden, who is he? And I'm like, oh, he's Rob Stark.
Right. See, alternatively, I had no doubts that it was Rob Stark from the very start because I was so sad in, spoiler alert, when he doesn't make it through whatever season that was of Game of Thrones.
3 or 4? Yeah, I don't know.
But, yeah, I definitely knew it was him, and I definitely melted and had to be, like, scooped up off the floor.
It threw me off, like, so hard that he didn't have a beard.
Yeah, but it was so nice to see him in bright colors.
Right, and his like eyes are super out there. Oh my goodness.
Beautiful, curly, wonderful hair and smiling and on a horse. And
oh, yeah.
Just a wonderful person to look at and to see as a prince,
Well-cast prince, yes.
Because he was always a prince, so it was beautiful. There was also Haley Atwell. Which, Elisabeth, you said you knew the name right away.
I saw her name and I'm like, oh, I know who she is. But seeing her in the movie, I was like, who is she? Because Haley Atwell, we know her as Peggy Carter from all of the Marvel stuff, all the live action Marvel stuff. But she's brunette as Peggy Carter, which I guess she naturally is. And she's super blonde as Cinderella's mom. So I'm like, who is this woman?
Right. Now I look at it, the face is definitely, oh, it's Peggy Carter. Right. But I didn't see it the whole time I was watching it.
I think what caught me is her lips, because she has very distinctive lips. And they almost remind me of Gina Davis, if you know who I'm talking about. They're very similar to her lips for some reason. I don't know why I'm like noticing people's lips, but that's just that's just what I noticed. And I'm like, okay, I recognize that, but I know it's not Gina Davis.
Sure. Oh, and Lady Tremaine, the evil stepmother.
Oh, yes, that was Cate Blanchett, who is the wonderful Lady Galadriel and Hela from Thor Ragnarok, and
so many other things.
Yes. Whatever else you want to pick that she's in, like
Yeah, one of these days we're going to do one of those shows where we talk about like all the people that fly across fandoms, and we're quick to the draw and late to the draw. Like there's so many people who are now getting into the things that we love that haven't been in it before, and those that were in it really early. And Kate Blanchett has been all over fandoms from day one,
everywhere. Yep.
Yeah, and she's just amazing.
Speaking of someone else who's all over the place, the fairy godmother is played by Helena Bonham Carter.
Yes.
So
her as a blonde.
I know, right? Wow.
But it's so cool to see her as a happy character, like as a happy, flippant, eccentric character.
Yes. I mean, she's usually
she's always eccentric, but you know, like flippant, happy, magical.
Yeah.
And of course, I was listening to Cinderella playing, and I heard her voice, and as she's talking to Cinderella, and I go, I know this voice. I'm sure of it. And I had to look and said, oh, yep. Within like 5 seconds, I knew it was her.
Exactly. Yep. Yep. So, you know,
and she was so much fun too. Like it was it was so fun to see her go from.
It kind of echoed back to like the forgetful fairy godmother from the animated series, or the animated one. But she was like, you know, it was different, and you know, they didn't do the bippity boppity boo song, but they did. Yeah. She said it to do her spells. I'm like, aw.
I was a little disappointed. I've got to say, you know, I know we're doing kind of a comparison of these two things. And I will admit that one of the things that I was a little disappointed with was that the fairy godmother wasn't a little old lady.
Oh,
like, I know she did the beggar kind of motif to start with, where she was like asking for something from Cinderella, and Cinderella was like, yes, I can get it for you. And a little bit of kindness goes a long way. And I get all of that. I understand it. And I love the way that they transitioned into it. But I also was just a little sad that she wasn't the little round fairy godmother the whole time.
Yeah. But I think this one also kind of brings out, from the Rodgers and Hammerstein version of Cinderella, that the fairy godmother is more of this like magical, like being, and she's not like, she doesn't have a specific age, but she's more of kind of an ageless type person. Mm-hmm. And so like in the other movies, so like Rodgers and Hammerstein with, you know, Whitney Houston was the fairy godmother. She wasn't some cripply old lady or some round old lady either. Or the fairy godmother when Julie Andrews played Cinderella. I don't remember the actress that played her, but she definitely was not an old woman either. So, yeah. Also, I have played the role of fairy godmother when I was a senior at high school. You know, good times. And I was definitely not an old woman. And they didn't dress me like one either. I got to wear some like discount wedding gown, so that was fun.
Sure.
It was wonderful. But anyway,
I just love it. I love that there is the magic that is attributed to it. And even at the very end of the movie, she says something about how as long as you believe in courage and kindness and a little bit of magic. And so I think that that's really, really wonderful and beautiful. But at the same time, I don't know. Anyway, there's also at least one other character that I think we recognize or will be recognizing soon.
I nabbed him immediately. Yeah. I don't know him by name, but I know him by sight.
You caught it.
I don't know. There's just no way that I can't not recognize this dude. His name's Namzo Anazi. He was Zarodaxos from Game of Thrones, if anybody remembers the merchant who ended up locked in his own vault after trying to seduce Daenerys. And
now that you mentioned that scenario, I'm like, oh yes, that guy. Because like everyone thought he was going to be the good guy, and he totally wasn't.
And he wasn't. Like I don't know. I always remember him. So he immediately stood out to me. And I'm like, oh, I know him.
A very imposing character though, on the stage compared to the other on the stage, on the screen compared to other people on the screen. When you see him in the scene, he's very.
He's a big dude.
Yeah.
Well, he plays the captain of the guard.
Warm and wanting the best for the prince, and wanting the prince to be able to find the love that he had found and continue on with that, because then there's this little spindly the Duke. What was he?
Yeah. Was it the Duke or the
I don't
Herald?
know.
The Archduke or whatever he was? Yeah.
Whatever he was. He was such a snide character.
The guy that was on the king's side of things.
Yes.
Yeah,
and for the
Duke.
captain to be like, oh, do you hear that singing? Do you where is that coming from? And for him to go find it and recently Aurelia and I went and saw another musical on stage, and it was so cool to see the variances that the choreographers and directors put on stage, where you see people standing up where other people are sitting down, and just the way that the stage is directed for negative space and positive space. And I feel the same way with when I saw him in just this very intimate scene where he looks at the prince and says that the prince tells him to go find where the singing is coming from. And I was just like, oh, because he takes up the whole space, but he looks so warm and cute.
Yeah, like a teddy bear kind
For
of.
lack of a better way of saying it.
Yeah.
But then he can still be that intimidating when he needs to be, because when Lady Tremaine is like, I forbid you from going down there, and he's like, I forbid you from forbidding you.
Right. And he says, who are you? Are you a deity?
Yeah.
Are you someone who can come against the captain of the royal guard? And she's like,
remember who you're talking to.
Yes,
exactly.
Yes, I loved it.
Which makes me super excited for a role that's coming out, I think, this August. He is going to be the role of Butler in the Artemis Fowl movie coming out. And now, if you guys don't know the Artemis Fowl, realm, Butler is Artemis Fowl's bodyguard, and the Butler family has been serving the Fowl family as their bodyguards for generations. So he's going to be super epic. I'm super excited.
Okay.
Our episodes are brought to you by Squadcast, and we're so excited to announce that they are now out of beta and are fully released. With each of us living in a different time zone, Squadcast makes it easy for us to record and still make it sound like we're all in the same room. You can use our code TALKDIRTY in all caps for 50% off your first month of Squadcast. Check out our affiliate link on our show's page at publichousemedia.org.
All right, so let's dive into the movie.
Yes.
Yes.
Number one thing that I noticed, again, very kind of almost similarly to Beauty and the Beast, was the amount of diversity that they kept in the class, that they kept in the cast. Like, even in the noble classes, they included people of color, and I was like, yes, somebody on the writing staff is doing their homework, and I love it.
I feel like this wasn't like a kept in the class, though. This was kind of an implemented into it, because if you look at the original, there really wasn't much diversity at all.
Well, no, that's what she's saying is
right.
Yeah.
Like, it was implemented in a way that is actually accurate to history and how it was, and not, the whitewashed version that, we've been fed for years and years and years.
Sure.
And I absolutely love that, these movies are coming out that are historically accurate, that depict people of color in all stations, not just like as servants or as, like townsfolk or anything like that, but actually in the noble classes, in the courts, mingling with royalty, because that's the way it was,
I mean, we can also talk about, a few other aspects of it, but I think it's important to keep in mind that this is sort of a made-up kingdom.
True.
A made-up time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't even specify where.
A lot of influences from other places, but it's pretty clear that it's not really a real place.
I think that's fairly similar to a lot of fairy tales that they have. Like, if they don't specify like a real place, that it's meant to just be, oh, well, it's somewhere over in Europe, or it's somewhere over in Australia, or
I guess I'm just trying to say this is a little different than like Beauty and the Beast, where we know that was France and we know the idea for that, like this is a little different, but
like we know that they're not in France because they were speaking French, but we couldn't understand them. That's about it.
Yeah, but I mean, at the same time, still, even though it's an amalgamation of like some European country, still, like, even just presenting something as whitewashed, it still contributes to that idea that, oh, well, that's kind of what it was like in real life. So I really appreciate that they went that extra mile to include people of color to, even though it's a fictional world, it's still more or less based on something in our world.
Right.
And so therefore,
And it makes it more believable and more relatable too. It makes it much more relevant.
Yep.
Which is something I've always loved about live action stuff, is when they can make it something that is more true to what we want, what we're used to seeing, what we want to see, and even what is kind of strived for on the stage. If you go to a school and you cast all of the kids, you don't want the kids to think that, oh, well, I'm not a white skinny person, I can't be in that play. You don't want them to ever believe that. So
Right.
For it to be more diverse is much more important, because you would want to portray a more reality than the 1950s animation.
I don't know if this is portraying reality so much, but I loved the colorfulness and the costuming of a lot of the people you could see. What I especially thought was interesting was Lady Tremaine's costumes, because hers were like, they were very not a specific time period. Like, I got the vibe that like they were inspired by 1700s type clothing, but they were also in the style of like 1940s. So it was like really interesting. Like it like showed off her like fashionista persona.
Sure.
And like they even her hairstyles were very like 40s glamour chic kind of thing. It was so cool.
Yeah. Kind of like if Cruella de Vil was Cinderella's stepmother.
Yes.
And how cool was it that she was Kate Blanchett and
Right.
not an old stuffy gray lady with a high collar and a
exactly
stroking a cat the whole time? Like, way to go, Disney, on that one.
Right.
Like that,
yes. Like I actually thought she was pretty relatable. Like, I knew she was the stepmother. I knew what to expect of that, but she was actually a pretty relatable stepmother.
She was much more relatable than the gray stuffy one was. Yeah.
Yes.
I can see that for sure.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Pretty much like the only like, I guess I would say the biggest complaint is the consistency with the acting, because like the writing wise, I liked the direction. I'll talk about that later. But like acting itself and the way it came across, like some parts were a lot more like fantastical, and like they were trying to evoke a more of like the cartoon.
Yeah.
Like they were actually people like acting out something that. But then like other parts were like really serious and like realistic in real life, and it's like it was kind of jarring. I know that they were trying to walk the line between that, but I think they didn't quite nail it, and it was just kind of jarring to go in between realistic gritty acting and then all of a sudden this bright fantastical kind of...
I could see that, because there was the scene, like this, I liked the scenes where they were more realistic, like where Ella and the prince were in the forest and they were meeting, or like Ella and her friend were at the market and that sort of stuff. Like, that's super casual and it seems like realistic stuff. And then you have the scenarios where I don't know, like they're
talking to the mice.
Yeah, talking to the mice. And that's very fantastical, which is fine. Like, they can do that, but like, I don't know.
There's a part of me.
It didn't seem as casual as the other scenes, so it seemed kind of
right. There's a part of me that would kind of missed like the singing mice and the singing to the mice and the talking mice. You don't hear Gus and you don't hear them talking.
Yeah,
they're making their noises, and the goose person even says at some point, "I'm a goose. I don't drive."
Right.
And I get it, but at the same time, I feel like that kind of balance would have been hard on any realm to make. I appreciated that they tried to be as close as they could to some parts of the original movie.
Yeah.
But that there was a certain reality that they had to portray as well. So, like I agree with you, the marketplace scene and talking on the horses in the forest and those things are things we've seen a million times before. You know, every fantasy live action movie we've ever seen has the guy meet the girl in the forest and talking and you know, I mean, Princess Bride, and come on, we could name a million.
Well, even Sleeping Beauty, the animated Sleeping Beauty has that.
Sure. And you know, so like that's something that we're used to seeing,
Right.
but the talking to the mice, or the changing of the carriage, the changing of the pumpkin into the carriage, or the you know, Bruno turning into a footman, these are things we don't normally see. So I do feel like the transition that they made was actually quite true to the original film, and I appreciated that they did certain things. I struggled with the idea of the mice not singing the song about making the dress.
Yeah, I missed
but
that.
I also understand that would have been kind of silly.
It would have been too fantastical in the
It would
realistic
have been
setting.
silly to try and make it happen
Exactly.
with what they had. So the elements that they had of the mice, and her talking to the mice, and her referring to them as friends, and having Lucifer the cat, and those things I appreciated more than anything else. I didn't feel as gypped because they were there.
Right, yeah. And like, I mean, in general, I'm just a little bummed that it's not like a full-on musical, but at the same time, I'm kind of glad, because I probably would have just been comparing the whole time to the original Disney, or even to like the Rodgers and Hammerstein music. You know, it's probably better that there wasn't a lot of music, and there was a little bit, you know, like there was the ball music and there was the song.
She sang the
you know.
Nightingale song.
Yeah.
Did you love that, or did you love that?
Yes. Like, oh.
I loved the little Easter eggs that they had sprinkled through there. And like I probably have to watch it like several more times just to try to catch them all. But yeah, like that was one of the Easter eggs that I picked up, and I'm like, oh,
right,
so
the
cool.
Sing Sweet Nightingale. And I'm so glad that the stepsisters weren't trying to sing it.
Oh, that was awful.
They were singing some other awful song, and I was so happy. I was like, please do not mess up the song.
I'm glad I didn't know what that song was supposed to sound like.
But the whole, what was up with the lavenders are blue and white and dilly dilly? What was that about?
That's a little folk song or something.
It's an extra thing that I wasn't expecting.
I know.
Dilly dilly. Who's dilly dilly, and why is dilly dilly? And
it is like a little folk song though. It's something. It's like a common, like, I don't know, English folk song or something like that.
Yeah, it's a little
nursery rhyme.
I feel like I'll have to look that up. It was cute, and it was commonplace, and I understood.
And it came in and out of the actual orchestration and stuff too. And then it was like the one at the end. I'm like, aw.
Yeah, I love backstory. I've always loved backstory. I love backstory in movies, and I love backstory in mythology and everywhere else. And I do feel like that was something that was really lacking in the animated version. You know, we drop right into her Cinderella being with the stepmother and stepsisters.
Well, because you have to read the beginning of it. It's in the fairy tale books. You like have to read it, and if you're a 4-year-old kid, you're not going to be able to read it.
Well, if you're a 4-year-old kid, you're watching the 1950s animated version.
But
but what I loved about this was that, you know, we get so much backstory about Ella, and it's just beautiful. And it's really important. You know, we've seen so many other Cinderella renditions where, you know, there's Ever After, and there's all these other ideas of how things had happened for her prior to that. But what I loved so much about this is that it's Disney, and it's giving us the backstory of Ella and her father and her mother, and things we're not used to seeing. So, you know, we really get an in-depth look at her life before her mother died, and before she lost her father too.
I love that.
And that's the thing. Usually it's, Cinderella's father was a widower, but this one really focuses a lot about happiness, and happiness that they had as a family.
Yeah.
And how paramount that was to their life. I was a little disheartened because there seemed to be sort of a darkening about, you know, when the mother died. And did the mother die of consumption? What was that?
It didn't really specify.
It doesn't say. No, nothing says or is implied. I wouldn't say it's consumption just because she
I
wasn't
heard I
coughing.
She
heard a
was.
cough once, yeah.
Oh, she coughed a bunch.
Yeah. Like after she sang the song the first
At
time,
the
she left the
window.
room and she
And there
coughed.
was no like,
But
and usually consumption, they'll make a point to show
right,
like
Blood on
blood
the
they
on a
didn't do
handkerchief.
handkerchief.
that.
Yeah.
They didn't show, yeah, they didn't show that. So yeah, the scene where we first found out that she was sick, she was leaving Cinderella's room, Ella's room, I should say, and she coughed. And then after that, she was in the hallway with her husband, and she just fell. She collapsed, like eyes wide
See, and
open.
that's why I thought it was consumption because, like I said, I listen more than I
Yeah.
watch
So you
sometimes,
didn't
and
see the what
right.
happened after she coughed.
So I heard a lot more of coughing than I
Uh-huh.
did of seeing anything.
Right, exactly. But I don't know why she coughed, but she coughed to imply that she was sick, and then she collapsed. And then the
Mm,
next thing we see is she's laying in this like armchair, like chase lounge sort of thing, covered in blankets. So
okay.
And she's
yeah,
apparently dying.
Mm,
yeah, like the doctor leaves
yeah.
And
and
no real explanation was given.
Yeah, and
Same
it's
thing
like
with her
so
dad.
sad.
Oh,
And
he
she says
still.
this whole have courage and be
I
kind
loved
thing.
that.
And I'm wondering like what was happening in 2015 that Disney felt like we needed to have courage and be kind. Like
I don't know, man.
what's going on? Because that was not something that was paramount in the animated version.
No, it
You
wasn't.
know, there wasn't a whole lot of
But
that.
we also didn't
I
like Cinderella had such a pure heart in the movie,
Mm-hmm.
even though she was being mistreated by her step siblings
Mm-hmm.
and her stepmother, like she was still do what they asked. And
Well, and it does come to play later on when she talks to her stepmother and she's like, I really tried to be
yeah.
kind and courageous with you, but you're just an awful human.
I mean, it kind of, yeah, that's kind of how it came off.
Yeah, I mean, writing wise, I think this was one of the strong points for the movie because it when it comes to writing, there's a lot to be said for not having so much buildup that people get bored before you even get started with the story. But there is still a balance to strike. And if you dump somebody in a story at the beginning where you're in the middle, basically in the middle of a story, you lose a lot of these character building aspects. And I really like that we did get this more in-depth look at her life before her mother's death and her father's remarriage and then his eventual death, because it really provides a nice contrast to her life before and her life afterwards. And it also kind of provides a slower, more gradual transition into her life as a
Yeah.
servant. It kind of makes it a little bit more realistic, because in the animated it's kind of like, oh well, her father died, so she's now our servant. Like it doesn't quite
Yeah.
compute that way. I think like when you really think about it, like how did that even happen? But seeing the classic narcissistic abuse
Hmm.
play out on screen, it's so easy to connect those dots from A to B, like, okay, this is why this happened, and this is how this happened, and this is why she's doing
Right.
this.
Mm,
Like,
Right.
you can now easily see the pattern of how these things came to be.
So like a little example of that. So since you didn't actually see what happened with um this example is Cinderella made breakfast for everybody, the mother, the stepsisters, herself, and then she goes to the table to serve it, and one of the stepsisters is sitting in her place. And the stepmother
okay.
goes, "Oh, you wouldn't want to sit and eat with us after making all that food. Wouldn't you like some time to yourself after you've cooked? Why don't you just go eat in the kitchen by yourself?" And she's like, "You say what now?" Like she was really upset about it. And so just kind of like stumbled into the kitchen and like really sad, and dropped her plate trying to put it on the table in the kitchen. And I was watching this with my daughter, and she's 4, almost 5, and she's like, "Why is she sad? Why did she drop her plate?" And I'm like, "Well, her stepmom just told her she can't eat with them." And she's like, "Oh."
Right.
Yeah. And even before then, like they set that up to where the reason she's making breakfast for them is because, they kind of established that the stepmother and the stepsisters don't really
That's
keep
yeah,
house, they don't clean,
that's not their
cook or
thing.
anything. And they had servants and everything that they had and that they were able to have before Ella's father
Right.
died. But obviously after he died, they couldn't afford them. And since Ella's the only one around that is able to cook and clean, then everything basically fell to
Yeah.
her. And so you get to see this build up into, oh, this is why this happened. You know, it didn't just happen all at once overnight. It was just little things that kind of built up.
Yeah.
And even the narrator kind of explained it as, you know, since this was, you know, obviously a big tragedy for Ella, they kind of passed it off as, oh, well, this will keep you busy and keep you distracted so you don't
It's like
on your grief.
it's
And
something
then
constructive.
it was one little thing that added up and added up and added up.
Yeah, they talk about that, how it was literally meant to distract her from her grief.
Right. And like, well, and it's something she knows how to do and probably might find comfort in because it's something that productive that she can do. Maybe that's how they justified it at first.
Yeah, and then they just take advantage of it. Because by the time that, you know, they tell her, oh, you can't eat with us anymore, it's been likely just months of them just piling more and more work on her, and she's gotten to the point where it's just like, why would she even say no? Right. You know, what reason does she have to say no?
It irritated me so much that the stepmother refers to her as the servant girl so many times throughout more than half of the movie. And she refers to her over and over as the servant girl. And I keep thinking like, no, she's not the servant girl. She's the reason you even have a home at all. Like, oh my goodness. Each and every time I was so upset.
Yeah. And then like,
because she's not.
Well, and after she found the slipper, after the stepmother found the slipper and confronted Ella about it, she's like, well, let me tell you my side of the story.
Oh, I hated that. Oh,
I don't
Can we
think
talk
so.
about the stepmother and the stepsisters and how much I hate them? Because I hate them so much. I don't like them as animated people, and I don't like them as real people either.
I'm pretty sure you're not supposed to.
For various reasons, though. Like the animated versions were so catty.
Yeah, awful.
But the real life ones in the 2015 version are like just a different version of ugly. Like just.
And I'll tell you why. It's because, and this is especially when I was watching that scene, my alarm bells were going off, because this is a real life depiction of narcissism. In a narcissist worldview, they are the hero. And I mean, I'm sure we're the hero in all of our own stories, but they are the hero to the point where they can do no wrong, where anything wrong that they do is not their fault. It didn't really happen that way. They couldn't really help themselves. Oh, it didn't really happen the way it happened.
There was no other option. Yeah.
Yes. And so it all becomes about them, and they're the victim, and, you know, nothing is ever their fault. And I've seen that play out in my real life so many times. It's just like, oh my God, like I don't really want to watch it play out again.
I mean, at least you know that this is fiction, but for other people, you know that it's not, and that's awful.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm not sure how many people out there are going to draw that connection unless you actually have like real life experience with that, in which I hope you don't. It's awful,
but I feel like
I think that's why like it speaks like, and you hate it so much, Lindsay, is because there are people out there that are like this. These are depictions of real people, more or less.
It's just so hateful. Like they even at the very end, and I know I'm skipping ahead, but at the very end they come out after Lady Tremaine is put in her place, and they're like, oh, I'm so sorry, my dear sweet sister, and she's like, no, but they come out like they couldn't possibly be wrong, and it's so hard to believe that they haven't done all these awful things to her, but at the same time they portray these characters that do believe that they are in the right, that they haven't done anything wrong. So it's it's easy to hate them, but at the same time it's so, I mean, it makes sense that's why I don't like them so much, but it's interesting how the writing does that for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, just a very quick aside, like just in my own experience, and I'm gonna like shorten it up really, really quick. Like more or less on the morning of my 20th birthday, my father assaulted my mother, and I had to get her out. And a week later, I met up with my dad, and I confronted him about it, and he looked me dead in my face and said, "That didn't happen." Like I was there, I witnessed it with my own eyeballs, but he had the gall to look at me in my face and say, "That didn't happen."
Mm.
Like that is how narcissists work. Like because in his mind, nothing happened. He didn't do anything wrong, you know?
Right.
And that's how they work. And it was actually refreshing in a way to see it portrayed on screen like that, because it's like now we have an example to point to when people ask about examples like this, because when you say narcissist, people typically think of people who are just stuck up and just so into themselves, but it's so much more than that.
Well,
And
sorry,
this is a great example.
the live action even seems to do a better job of that than the animated version does, because I remember, and I know that I don't like the stepsisters from the start, but they just seem stuck up in the animated version. However, in the live version, they are much more
cruel.
Right, they're much crueler by the way that they're portrayed.
Yeah, like getting at Ella personally.
Right.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so let's skip ahead a little bit to we know that Ella met Rob Stark.
Rob Stark in the forest on a horse.
He's such a wonderful actor. I'm so
Uh-huh.
sad we haven't seen him in so many more things.
I know.
Because he's so diverse and so beautiful to look at. Like, not in a weird,
gawky kind of way.
Gawky kind of way, but more of a, he's just those eyes and the smile. I could see him as Prince Charming in everything.
Yeah.
Is this the first time that we have have a name for him?
I think so. I don't really know if there's anything else. I mean, probably other like versions of the Cinderella story have a name for the prince other than Charming.
But it's like Prince Charming,
yeah.
right?
Like I know. I mean, in Once
Kit
Upon a
short
Time,
for? What is Kit even about?
Or is it just his nickname?
Kit, yeah. Well, it's what his dad calls him when his dad's not upset at him. So.
Oh, but I love it. I love it. I love it even when he refers to himself as an apprentice of monarchy.
It's
like,
right though.
Shut up.
It's so true though. I love it. I'm like, you clever guy.
I also really like that they met and kind of connected before the ball, because it gives them a nice little rapport that they can with each other, instead of, we just met this one time on this one night, gives them a reason to want to go after her, rather than, I just met this one girl this one time. It's like, no, I have actually met her before. I had a conversation with her. We exchanged some ideas, and she challenged some of my ideas, and we can kind of
and she continues to challenge the ideas too. Like, I recently saw a meme where Elsa from Frozen was like, Elsa's the queen because she says to Anna that you can't go marry someone you just met. And then you've got all these little pictures of Snow White and Cinderella and Sleeping Beauty all being combobulated because they are so sad they can't be with the man they just met.
Right.
And this really brings a different aspect to it, because she beats him. She, makes an impression upon him, and he is infatuated with her. And it seems like she sort of could or could not, it even is like she goes to the ball, not necessarily to go meet the prince and, go see him again, because she clearly doesn't know that he's the prince. She's going to the ball because she wants to go to the ball.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
Shut up. Who doesn't want to go to a ball?
Right. And I think she's under the impression he might also be there too, but she doesn't know he's the prince.
Who cares? She's gonna dress up and go to the ball
and have a good night out.
Right.
This is one of the big differences, and this really speaks to the differences in time and culture between the 1950s and today, because in the 1950s it was like, I'm going to go to the ball, I'm going to meet the prince, and I'm singing about someday my prince will come, like you know, her focus was much more on meeting a guy and marrying him, because that's pretty much what women were supposed to focus on back in 1950. Whereas even in the 1997 Rodgers and Hammerstein version, she was much more focused on, I just want to go out and I want to have a good time, you know?
And how cool is it that like that's where we're at? You know what I mean? Like, I know that there's a lot of stuff sometimes we talk about empowering women and feminism and all of that, but this is really kind of a cool, like, fun night off from cleaning the house and being the maidservant to her stepsisters and all of that. Like, it's really beautiful to me that that's what she is kind of intending to do, and the, you know, to the victor go the spoils of seeing Kit again. And she gets to the ball and she dances with him, and they go away privately, and she's like, oh, so you're the prince. And she still doesn't tell him, like, she's just a servant, and, you know, she's just a commoner. But there's something beautiful about that too. Like, I was so mad at her because she's a liar, but at the same time, like, I wouldn't tell him. I mean,
well, you just found out he's the prince, so what are you going to want him to think you are?
Right, exactly. Yeah. I will admit, you know, I was a little sad that there wasn't as much singing in this one.
Yeah.
I was sad that the stepsisters didn't sing. I was sad that the mice didn't sing. I was almost kind of sad that we didn't get a scene where Cinderella was cleaning and singing the Sing Sweet Nightingale song. Although I did appreciate that they did put the song in there. Yes, I love
that they tossed that in there.
She was humming it, and I was like, oh, yay! So it's really like, okay. I don't know. I almost kind of liked the live version better than the animated version, because I know we grew up with the animated version, but there's something very
more mature, at least for this time that we're living
in. Yeah. I feel like Disney grows with me, you know?
Yeah, I think you're right. I would agree.
I'm almost kind of excited about, like, Lion King coming out. Like, I'm excited to see what they think 33-year-old version of me wants to see with Simba and Nala and all that stuff. But regardless, what I loved about Cinderella was always I've always loved the Cinderella stories and the princess stories and all of those things. And we've really grown as a culture with everything that's happened. You know, when Elsa ends up the true act of love being from her sister, and that being so paramount, as well as all the different things that have happened recently with Disney. I'm excited for those things. I appreciate them. I love them. I like that Disney is going this route with the live action stuff, because, you know, a lot of times I'm like, oh, we're doing another Cinderella movie. Oh, we're doing another Beauty and the Beast movie. But there's something that they bring to it every time that is important. And a lot of the times I was thinking, okay, what in 2015 did Disney feel like we needed to hear? And there's a lot of camaraderie that is brought up in this. I'm someone who loves quotes. I love to pull quotes out of things and apply them to my everyday life and apply them to what's going on around us. And there's a point where the prince is talking to his father, and he says his father had just told him, you know, they're talking about having to marry royalty. And he says, you know, no, that we don't need to look outside of our kingdom for strength. We just need to look within ourselves and have courage and be kind. And I love that Cinderella brings that to him, like sets it in front of him, and he takes it to heart and he brings it to his father. And I just love that. But I know that there was something that Disney was trying to say, you know, like, I know that they were trying to say, like, have courage, be kind. We just need to look within ourselves. Okay, cool. Sure. And it's a very fantastical, and it's not necessarily real, and it's not necessarily true. It is what it is. But I love the extra tidbits. I love the quotes. I love I love everything about Disney. I'm a Disney baby, so
yes, same. Like the names have power, like magic spells thing, and yes.
I just love it. And I'm so excited when I watch things like this, and the way Disney has grown with us, you know, like 1950s, 19 whatever, and watching these movies the whole time we grew up, and for them to make these live action versions that are able to encompass a more broader understanding of people around us and all of the things that are around us. I love that. I love that there's a greater understanding with the live action versions than what there was with the animated versions. And I also really, really appreciate that when they bring out the live action versions, they seem like just they're not a far cry from the animated version.
Right.
There's a scene inside the castle where they are about to start dancing, and I swear all I saw was whatever was on the animated screen, just real life.
Exactly. Yep.
It's like the live action movies become a little bit more of a well-rounded story, where you might look back at something like, like Cinderella from 1950s. It has kind of some outdated and antiquated themes to it, and say, okay, you know what, we can do this better. And we can still do this story, but we can update it a little bit. And we can even round out the world a little bit, like we were talking about with the world building. And I mean, really, if there's one character that I think gets a lot more development and attention compared to the animated version, it's the prince. Because in the animated version, it's like he's just there.
He's Prince Charming. We're not supposed to know much about him.
Yeah. He's Cinderella's ticket out of the life that she has.
That we know.
But in this version, we get to see a lot more of his background. We get to see portions of his life. We get to see like the pressure and the decisions that he faces. We get to see the people that he interacts with, the people that he has relationships with, like his father, his captain, and people like that. We usually know a lot about Cinderella, but there isn't always as much an emphasis on the prince. And I like that they did this because it becomes more of a story about two people meeting and coming together, and not just a random prince sweeps this woman off of her feet.
I don't know, like, what about him does that, because we don't know anything about him.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, because I mean, in the original, it's like, okay, well, what are they dance? Okay, did they talk? Like, what are they even talking about? How are they
sang a song together? Okay.
You know, but yeah, but we get actual tangible proof that, oh yes, they talk, they connect, they exchange these ideas, and they even change themselves because of
even like when they're apart too. We learn about them as individuals.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of like love at first sight stuff with Disney, and what I loved about this one, that there is love at first sight. He is obviously infatuated with her from the minute he meets her, but that it grows and it has a place to drop seed and flourish from there with him. I also love that we get to see not just the boisterous wanting to have grandchildren version of the king, but that the king is parting, and that he wants a solid foundation for his son and for his kingdom. Like I really appreciated that, because it really developed a relationship between the prince and the king, and it wasn't so much about I want you to make babies for me, so much as it was, I want you to be okay with our kingdom and with your family, and I don't want you to be alone, because he knew he was leaving his son.
Right. Exactly.
So I thought that was really cute. Not even just cute, but like awesome.
Right.
And in the end, when he does perish, and he talks about how, yes, I think you should be able to marry for love. And I think that, yes, you should marry for love. When he gives him that blessing, I was on my, like in my heart, I was on my feet. I was so excited, because he gets not only the blessing from his father, but I almost feel sort of like in the captain, his father was resonating as well, to say, yes, you can find love. And I already know that you've fallen in love, and that you not only love this woman, but you love our kingdom as well.
Right.
And I just was so like excited for that.
Mm-hmm.
not only that, but that Ella is able to have her own side story too, and that she, when she is locked in the locked away and isn't able to, fend for herself and go out and see that the slippers are being tried on and all of that. I was almost kind of sad that the mice weren't trying to get the key to her like they were in the animated version. But simultaneously, I know that they were trying to show her like, oh, look, the page is here and the captain's here, and they're doing this. Like there was a lot of squeaking noises and stuff going on, so I wasn't sure what was going on, except that they were trying to get her attention to do that.
Yeah.
But
what they did was they were actually, because she was kind of oblivious, so they were trying to like get her attention, and then when that didn't work, they actually jumped up and like opened the window. So
that's how the captain was able to hear her.
Yeah, then that's how
that makes sense. Yeah,
it was all hinging on Gus because all the mice jumped up and they weren't enough to pull down the handle, and so Gus had to jump up and provide that little extra.
Well, see, and so how cool that they did that. Like that was kind of a way of them getting the key to her. You know what I mean? Like it's, I get that they didn't exactly stay true to that, but also it was their own way of doing it. So that's pretty cool.
Exactly.
Modern problems need modern solutions.
Exactly.
So and of course when Kit even tells his dad, like, we don't need to look outside of our kingdom, we can look within our kingdom, and all we need to do is have courage and be kind. And the way that resonated within him from what Cinderella had said to him about the fox and hunting was so cool to me. Like it just really brought a different aspect to it, that love doesn't necessarily need to be about this instantaneous infatuation, that it can really be, or even that it should more be about the intelligence and personality of a person. I wanted that to resonate with me and with my daughter and with everyone around me more than anything else. I was really excited for that with them, because I felt like it was better than instantaneous love at first sight.
Yeah. All right. Well, I have one last thing that I want to talk about, because it's been my biggest question from the animated series to the live action, or animated. I keep saying series. It's a movie. Okay, animated movie to the live action movie. It's the same.
Mm-hmm.
Why do the glass slippers stick around after midnight, even though everything else like vanishes or goes back to the way it was?
No.
That is my question.
And you have a solution?
I have a thought, but I want to know if you guys have any thoughts too.
Because cannon fodder.
What was that?
That's the best guess.
What was it?
Because cannon fodder. That's
so here's my headcanon on it then, because I'm not 100% sure how it was portrayed in both of the movies. I'm wondering if maybe, since like everything else, the fairy godmother made things out of other things. Like the footmen were made out of the dog, the footman was made from the dog. The cat, or I don't know if the cat was anything. The mice were turned into horses. The pumpkin was turned into a carriage. What if she made the shoes just straight up out of magic, rather than making Cinderella's old shoes into the glass slippers? And that's why they didn't have to go back to the way they were at midnight, and they could just be the shoes.
It would be interesting, but I'm pretty sure she did make them from the shoes.
That's what the thing is. I don't remember.
I know the animated wasn't like straight up like, yeah, she made them from shoes. But I remember like, she did the bibbidi bobbidi boo, and like the dress transformed. And I remember like she lifted up her skirt, and
then there were shoes on her feet. Yeah. Now I don't remember if she had shoes on before that though. Like if she went outside and was barefoot. Although I doubt it.
I'm pretty sure she had
she always had those brownish. Yeah, I know she always usually wore those black brown flats like everywhere. Mm-hmm. But the thing I remember from the live action was that she took the shoes off, and then I don't remember specifically.
And then I thought she turned the shoes into the slippers and then put them back on.
See, that's what I don't remember. I don't know if they were like left to the side, and then the fairy godmother just made shoes in front of her. Because I remember her saying the line, "I'm rather good at shoes," and maybe it's because she's really good at shoes.
Maybe there's like just one aspect of the spell
Maybe.
that can stick.
I don't know. So
maybe that's the price of doing so much magic, where like, you know, pretty much everything
except for
expires
one
except
item,
for one thing.
and then
And
she
it's
had
like,
to decide.
yeah, and it's like, okay, if it's
Ooh.
shoes, then, you know, are you really going to stick
Right.
around? Do you really want to stick around?
Exactly. Like, one of these things has to stick around, and it can't be the pumpkin, or it can't be the carriage, you know?
Yeah, I've never been really good at fantasizing or
I don't know.
hypothesizing about those kinds of things. So I'd have to go back and watch that scene in
Yeah.
both ways over again.
Yep.
The only thing I can possibly come up with is the reason the shoes stuck around, and I literally just thought of this off the top of my head, is because the prince touched one of them.
Maybe.
Because nobody else really touched anything
No,
else.
not
What
that
if
like
it's because they got separated on the stairs?
maybe.
What if they had to, in order to dissipate, they had to be together?
Maybe.
But then if that's the case, then why didn't she just stay? Because then the dress and the shoes should have stayed.
I mean, I
But
guess
the dress was all one piece, and the carriage was all one piece, and
I don't know. I mean,
maybe
maybe
like it's like not GPS, but like, you know, if you have one thing and the other thing gets too far away, they don't connect anymore. What if it's like the two shoes
like
had to be
Bluetooth
close
connection or
together?
Wi-Fi. They ran out of Wi-Fi. They couldn't disconnect.
Well, you
I don't
know,
the prince thing might have something to it, because that does happen in both movies. Is he does touch the shoe like intentionally, not like an accidental brushing of the dress while they're dancing or something silly.
so it sort of like breaks the
Makes it permanent.
timeline.
Makes it permanent, maybe.
Hmm.
I don't know.
Okay.
So it's like if somebody else touches this, it could be permanent. But
Yeah,
you
or
know,
like her true
why would
love
I tell you that?
touches it, maybe. I don't know.
I
Yeah.
don't know. I feel like I'm waiting for my prince to touch
Something.
everything then. Let's go.
Touch my Converse.
Anyway,
that's all we've got for you today. So thanks for getting nerdy with us today. Also, be sure to check out our store. We have 3 pretty cool designs available for you to put on things, from like t-shirts to bags to mugs and all kinds of cool stuff. So go ahead and check it out. If you go to publichousemedia.org and click the store tab, you will be able to find our designs. There's the Talk Nerdy to Me, We Talk Nerdy to You, and our Beauties and Headcanons logo. It's also a TeePublic thing, so if you go to TeePublic and search Public House Media or search Beauties and Headcanons, you should be able to find our stuff that way as well. And with that, I am Emily.
I'm Elizabeth.
and I'm Lindsay, and thanks for getting nerdy with us today on Beauties and Headcanons.